Hi and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Luke Brown. Coming up in today's show. Red alert in China. We see how Beijing residents tackle recurring peaks in pollution. Plus the war on drugs. A special report from the Philippines as Rodrigo Duterte continues his brutal crackdown. And forget flight mode. We see why it's all about drunk mode in Japan this holiday season. Now, France may have been suffering major spikes in pollution and air quality this winter, but it's not a patch on what China's been seeing recently. The capital, in fact, has seen levels 10 times higher than normal. Luke Shrago has more on how Beijing residents are coping.
Beijing looms under a toxic fog. The Chinese capital's no stranger to pollution concerns, but this time the nation's environmental warning system has been left at its highest sustained level by airborne particulates, with red alerts going into effect across northern China as coal use ramps up during the cold winter months.
I keep my mask on and I avoid going out to places where there are a lot of people. I go out as little as possible.
Traffic reductions one-way authorities have tackled pollution levels, alternating vehicles allowed out day by day, with the notable effect of all but eliminating Beijing's notorious traffic jams. Elsewhere, people have seen the pollution as an opportunity. This startup blew onto the scene a year and a half ago, aiming to better disseminate warnings over air quality.
The alerts are very important because they give information to people who need to protect themselves while they're out. The pollution levels are so dangerous. If you stay out too long while breathing that, it'll really have an impact on your health.
The system's been helpful, particularly for the young, infirm and elderly, allowing them to choose just how much they can venture out.
The problem, if you can't tell anything about the air quality, is that you never think you're doing enough. You're always looking outside and asking what's going on. How is it I have a headache?
You don't always take notice of the quality of the air that you breathe. But while I'm pregnant, and therefore more at risk, I need a healthy and reassuring environment.
Police have been out in force maintaining traffic regulations, and authorities have gone further still, temporarily shutting down factories and construction sites in an effort to bring down pollution levels, thought to be tied to health issues behind 4,000 deaths nationwide every day.
Now to the Philippines, where President Rodrigo Duterte swept to power in June, promising to wage a ruthless war on drugs. Only 6 months later, and his brutal crackdown has claimed 6,000 lives. Known and suspected drug dealers and drug users are being killed, sparking international alarm. Our correspondents went to Manila, where they followed the police during a drugs raid.
In the dead of the night, the police make their way through Manila's red light district. The presence of our camera could compromise the raid, so they approach the suspect's home without us. When we arrive at the scene 2 hours later, police officers carry a seriously injured man out of one of the homes. Shocked neighbours stand and watch. Then they take out a second man. Both suspected drug traffickers died shortly after they arrived at hospital. Police found 10 bags of methamphetamine with an estimated value of €280 in their home. To get the last word about the shooting, we have to wait until the following day.
They got their firearms because they noticed that he was not really a buyer of drugs and shoot it out with our policemen. So our policemen have to defend themselves, and they also shot. As a result, two of the drug pushers died.
Asked to justify what some have called summary executions, police often insist that they were acting in self-defense. But the National Commission of Human Rights questions those claims. The Commission's Gwendolyn Pimentel-Gana is currently investigating 250 cases of alleged extrajudicial killings.
What sometimes we find disturbing is that the police would say they fought us, that's why we had to shoot them. Now the question is, do you always have to end up shooting them and killing them? Why couldn't you just have immobilized them? So what we are proposing is they have to be transparent in their operations.
The police are not the only people fighting the Philippines' war on drugs. Vigilante groups are also suspected of attacking drug traffickers and users. It's part of an unregulated crackdown, encouraged by Rodrigo Duterte, who has publicly urged citizens to take up arms against drug dealers. That's how Joven Serrano, a methamphetamine dealer, met his end. Killed by a volley of bullets, fired by men wearing helmets in an alley not far from here.
I am angry with the killers because I have 4 children who have now lost their father. Of course, I know that the murderers also have parents, a wife, children, yet I want them to be executed in turn.
It's here, at the biggest cemetery in the capital, that Joven's relatives say their final goodbyes.
We went to the crime scene because we wanted the murderers to feel guilty for what they did. President Rodrigo Duterte is allowing men to be slaughtered like animals.
Despite the global outcry over the spate of killings, an overwhelming majority of Filipinos support Duterte's bloody war against drugs.
And you can watch an extended version of that story in our weekly show Reporters, which you can find on our website. Now, it's more than 2,500 kilometres long and stretches from the western Himalayas to the Bay of Bengal. The Ganges is sacred to Hindus in India, and it's also a lifeline to the many who live along its path. It provides nearly a quarter of the country's water resources. Mark Thompson follows the river to its source and tells us why it could be in danger.
A river as legendary as it is divine. The Ganges is sacred for some 900 million Hindus and brings life to the dry plains of northern India. Our voyage towards its source begins at the foot of the Himalayas. The town of Rishikesh is to Hindus what Lourdes is to Catholics, a spiritual place for millions and the birthplace of yoga more than 5 million years ago.
What we do when we practice yoga is allow that energy to flow through our body, unobstructed, free-flowing, unpolluted, just like the flow of Ganga.
To explore a different side of the Ganges, we take a winding road, only open during the summer, deep into the mountains. Carving its way through the precipices, the untamable river flows at an altitude of more than 3,000 meters. Difficult to access, it's a place of pilgrimage, the most ardent of which cross the country to witness an exceptional spectacle.
We've been planning this journey for years. We had to wait till retirement to find the time to come all the way.
For Hindus, the Ganges isn't just a river, but a divine entity in its own right. According to legend, the goddess Ganga came down to earth to purify mankind of its sins. Here, the temperature doesn't go above 5 degrees, but such is the belief in the water's healing power, many brace the cold and walk to the base of the glacier to clean.
I'm going to take some of this sacred water back to my village, distribute it around my family and friends. When we swim, we wash our sins away, whatever the temperature is in the water.
As you approach the river's source, some believe the water becomes even more spiritual. Situated at the bottom of the Gangroti Glacier, a small cave through which most of the Ganges water flows.
This is a really peaceful place. Up here, the Ganges is more pure, more sacred.
For now, the river is in danger. The glacier, which accounts for a large proportion of the Ganges water supply, is situated 6,000 meters up. In July, following heavy rains, a large chunk of it collapsed and was washed away.
Ganga dies or Ganga dries, both ways is going to affect us. It's going to affect the humanity, not only the human beings but the living beings.
Protecting the Ganges is considered an issue of national importance by the Indian government, a river that will be more than just sacred for future generations.
Now, have you ever had a few too many drinks and missed the last train home? Partygoers in Japan can now use a smartphone app with a special setting to help them catch that train and get home in a few simple steps. Olivia Salzar-Winspear has more on the app that could save you your blushes this holiday season.
In a city of over 13 million people, there's a high chance of getting a little lost from time to time. Even more so after a couple of beers or glasses of wine. But for the residents of Tokyo, that's now less of a problem, thanks to a new drinking buddy. Transport app Ekispert has a new setting. It's called drunk mode.
You need to pay attention to your health, and you also need to catch the last train home. Otherwise, you might have regrets the next day. So we hope our service will help people not to end up in that situation.
The app has been introduced to help residents navigate the city during the Christmas party season. All users need to do is make sure their phone's GPS functions on and then tap the app's drunk mode button. The function provides the fastest route home and even a 30-minute warning before their last train leaves. Engineer Erina Fukumoto says she came up with the idea when she found herself in the same predicament.
We really focused on how to make it easy to see the most important information. So we put the timing of the last train in red and decorated it to make sure users can see this most important information.
So are people on the streets planning to use it?
I often miss the last train home, so this thing is really useful. I wasn't even aware it existed.
While the app itself is free, the new function will set you back almost €2 a month, a price some revellers might be willing to pay to avoid an expensive taxi ride home.
And finally, the Japanese aren't the only ones making the most of the festive season. 76-year-old Carmen Suva from the Philippines has spent the last 40 years collecting Christmas memorabilia. She's amassed 3,000 different Santa Clauses, including a 10-foot inflatable Father Christmas. She puts them all on display every December and welcomes visitors inside what she calls her House of Santa Claus. We leave you with these images. Thanks for watching.